meeting on the 12th of September 2023. Item 1, apologies and changes in membership. I've got one apology from Susie Ellis, and she has been substituted by Vanessa Churchman. I haven't received any other apologies. Changes in membership. We do welcome a new representative from IWLC, Simon Cook, welcome. Item 2, minutes of the last meeting. Is anyone happy to propose that they're a true record? I see Councillor Quigley nodding, Councillor Love nodding. All those in favour? Agreed. I will sign those. Item 3, declarations of interest. Are there any? Doesn't look like it. Item 4, public question time. So I've got a written question here, one written question, and I can't see anyone in the gallery. I will read this out, and not least all the response isn't hugely long, and it relates to, well, obviously it relates to an item on the agenda, pre-decision scrutiny for children's services, item 7. So the question is from Simon Richards to the Cabinet Member for Children's Services. So the question is, regarding the proposals for children's services future arrangements, I note that the delivery of school improvement and governance support services by multi-academy trusts has not been included in the report to Cabinet. What are the reasons for excluding this option from the proposals? And I've got a written response here, which I'm happy to read out. The decisions about the delivery of all statutory services will become the gift of the new Isle of Wight Director of Children's Services and their leadership team, and are not within the scope of this report. In order to offer stability whilst the new leadership becomes established, option 2 of the report includes arrangements for buyback for a minimum period of 12 months of specialist services, including school improvement and governance. This would allow for smooth transition to take place and provide a stable environment for service delivery, whilst allowing time for future arrangements to be fully investigated by the new leadership. In addition to the above, it's important to note that it's not within the Council's gift to academise maintained schools, even if the Council adopted a policy of proactively persuading schools to become academies. The length of time and Council resource required for each conversion is significant and would extend way beyond the timescale of this paper. Item 5, progress update, pages 9 to 10. So there are a couple of things for me to raise or report. Back in January, the committee requested a copy of the review of leisure centres once it's been completed. The last update in July was that review should be ready in autumn time. Is that still correct? Leisure centres, Cabinet Member for Economy and Regeneration. So are we expecting the report or review of leisure centres to be available this autumn? So, sorry, Chief Executive.
Sorry, if I may, Chair, yeah, that's still on track as per the timeline that you were given at the last meeting.
Thank you. Also from the 7th of February, are there any heads of agreements in place in relation to the proposed disposal of Kingston Marine Park? The last update in July was that talks continue. Have we got anywhere near signed heads of terms yet? And on cue, the Cabinet Member walks in, but perhaps that's rather harsh. Our Chief Executive, are you happy to take that? Or? And just to clarify, are there any heads of terms in place at the moment? Okay, thank you. Actually, I will just add, do you anticipate when we might be in a position to have signed terms? I only because this was the 7th of February, obviously the announcement was made that there was someone and it went into the public domain. I'm just wondering how long it will go on for.
Yeah, but we have regular diet. But just to say that we're still working, and it's all going in the right direction.
Thank you. Cowes Floating Bridge. So there's a outstanding request from this committee from 3 named members, myself, Councillor Quigley and Councillor Quirk, to inspect the settlement documents that arose in the floating bridge settlement. I've communicated with the leader again just before this meeting, and we've agreed that request will now be dealt with by new leader who will be in place after Wednesday week. But I shall endeavour to bring that to a close by the next corporate scrutiny committee meeting because it's gone on for a bit. Councillor Quigley.
The understanding was at the time, whilst I was still chair, like to my guitar playing chair, was that the chair seat, which I have seen it, was then the problem was you couldn't agree then who the other 2 were. So that's where it's fallen down. So my understanding was that it was just waiting to see who you were going to agree it was, because at the time you weren't chair of the committee.
I think it moved on from there, Councillor Quigley. I've been shown an email where a formal request was put in also in the name of Councillor Quirk and I didn't appreciate you've seen it already, in which case that request, part of it falls away. There is a formal written request in relation to Councillor Quirk and I, but we can deal with that with the new leader. Thank you. Acquisition strategy. Oh, Councillor Adams must have been substituting last time. I don't know whether he's got a reply in relation to his question on modular homes, but he's not here to confirm that either way, unless, yes.
No, I did contact him for clarification on the questions, but he did not come back to me. So I did go to Dawn Lang, who's the strategic manager for housing, and she gave me a name of who I could get an answer from. I'm just waiting on that.
Okay, thank you. Item 6, committee work plan, forward plan. I've had a look at that. I can't see anything there to bring on to our work programme that's not already there. Is there anything anyone else identify? Councillor Love.
I'm just wondering about some kind of reference to the regeneration team and the fact that we've lost 10 members of the regeneration team moving forward, and what are we going to do in terms of addressing that moving forward. So I'd like to see that on the work plan.
Yep. Wendy Pereira. Oh.
Thank you, Chairman. If I may, this relates to the senior management reorganisation that we've had as a council. If I could just confirm that we haven't lost 10 members of the regeneration team. What I can do is provide, and I'm working on at the moment, the final structure for the council and the teams that sit under the council, the various directors that we now have in place. And I will confirm the number of staff that we have lost, as a reason being the restructure, but it's not 10 members of the team that has been lost.
Councillor, I'm happy for you to go again. I don't think it's on the forward plan, this, but
No, but that's what I'm asking for it to be put on the forward plan. So we need to look at what we're going to be doing in the regeneration team. And I have a text saying that we've lost 10 members of that team. What matters is not necessarily the fact that we've lost 10 members, but how we're going to progress with regeneration issues moving forward, which I'm happy to handle through the restructure of the team. But we need to know what that looks like moving forward, because it's a big part of our council business.
Are you proposing, Councillor Love, that we put it on our scrutiny agenda, or are you happy to deal with it in another way? Before I come to you, I'm just going to ask Wendy Pereira to respond.
I just wonder whether there's an item that would be more appropriate coming through policy and scrutiny for regeneration and neighbourhoods, looking at the regeneration strategy and moving the regeneration strategy forward, given the new context and climate that we're working in.
Councillor Love, happy with that?
I'm happy to do that, as long as that we need to understand what the impact of that is on the council's business, and that's the bit that we need to scrutinise.
Yeah. Councillor Quirk.
I think that's probably a sound way to do it, but with the option for that committee to pass it back to us if they think that there's more widespread implications than just the corporate, the policy and scrutiny committee for neighbourhoods.
Anything else? And then looking at the work programme, there's one item, 20 page 29, that I think we just need to formally put on the agenda for January, is the work plan scoping document in relation to maintenance and restoration of listed buildings. There's a proposed committee date there, 9th of January 2024. As I say, page 29 is the scoping document. Is everyone happy that we formally put that on our January agenda? Seems to be no, there were nods all round. Yes, Simon Cook.
Thank you.
So I'll just have to give it a second, Simon.
Can you hear me? Okay, yeah, okay. It's great that the Isle of Wight Council is looking at its listed building portfolio, and it's obviously got legal responsibilities and maintenance of those. But I was wondering if it would be a good time to look at the enforcement of privately owned listed buildings, which there are many around the island that have been left in disrepair. I appreciate that might not be out of scope, but is there a policy? I also appreciate that enforcement is a discretionary service, but where does that fit where there is a legal duty upon listed building owners to maintain their properties, and how is that enforced? Is there a policy for that?
Would it be, is the scope to widen the scope, as it were, of the scoping document to include private buildings? Yeah, I'm happy to look to widen the scope of that document. Look like nods all round. Councillor Love.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, I agree. I've got several listed buildings on my site, and I have to say that Lee Byrne is absolutely wonderful at the work that he does in listed buildings, but he is only one person. So I think having a look at what the resource is and what the implications are. There are a lot of listed buildings that are in that need to be considered. There's the clock tower at Shanklin. It's not even in my, it's had a fence around it for 5 years. We need to look at progressing some of this work if we possibly can. And then, of course, I've got Norris Castle, where the council, it's a private development, but the council has a significant influence over that because it's our officers that are enforcing the works to be done. And so things like, I'd like to know where we are with that, but that's more detail than what you're suggesting. But I agree that a review of that would be a good idea.
Well, let's widen the scope of the document to include private buildings and put it on our agenda for the 9th of January. Everyone happy with that? Yeah. Councillor Spink.
Thank you, Chair. For on the 10th of October on our work plan, pre-decision scrutiny, disposal of potential housing sites in East Cowes, could we please have a paper which sets out the basis on which that is said to be commercially sensitive? For example, the split between affordable housing and social housing does not seem to me to be commercially sensitive. So could we have it may be that the disposal price is commercially sensitive, but could we have a paper justifying commercial sensitivity for anything other than the purchase price or the disposal price? And secondly, my understanding is that there's a financial limit on delegated decisions. And I think that's 25,000. So could we have a confirmation that it's being disposed of for 25,000 or less, if my information's correct?
Is it possible to have those things in writing?
We'll provide written answers to those questions for you, and that will confirm the scheme of delegations, both for executive decision delegations and officer-based delegations, because that's where the difference lies. And I think that's where the issues arisen.
Thank you. But if there could be a report on the commercial sensitivity, please. Thank you.
Councillor Love.
Yes, thank you. Obviously, it's in my ward, so I've got an interest in that. I just want to ensure that site is not disposed of without specific conditions. So I'd like to see what those specific conditions are, which are to build X, Y, and Z before it's disposed of.
I think for the purpose of this committee, whatever the written response from the chief executive is, will obviously be shared to everyone.
Yeah, there's one more. Sorry, I just forgot.
Councillor Spink.
It's not shown on our work plan, I don't think, for the 10th of October, but on the 12th of October, the Affordable Housing Action Plan update comes before Cabinet. And I would have thought it would be something that corporate scrutiny might like to look at, the action plan with regard to affordable housing.
I've been told that's going to neighbourhoods and regen policy and scrutiny.
Okay.
Councillor Love.
Yeah, I've got something that I'd just like to bring up. So on the 6th of September, it was announced in the county press that there was actually, and I quote, a draft savings programme for next year, and it's on here as a discussion point, 9th of January. And so if there is a draft savings proposal, which has already been developed, can we see it, please? Early, rather than having to wait till the 9th of January to make it.
I agree. That seems like a long time to wait.
Well, it's stated in the county press that there's a draft savings plan. So I haven't seen anything. So I know that other people are not like. So if it's there, let's have it. It's been announced in the public, so let's have it.
I agree. Is that shareable?
Not at this stage, no. It's very much a first draft. As I've indicated in other meetings, the intention is to share it with members more widely when it's ready to be shared, but it is very much a working first iteration, and it will be shared in due course.
With respect, Chair, it's already been shared in the public. It's been stated that there's a plan in the public.
I would have thought it would be odd if we didn't have any sort of plan at this stage at all. The fact that it's been shared is that there is a plan, no detail.
I think what's being said is Councillor Bacon says there is a plan, but that draft has not been shared with anyone. It's just been announced that it exists. But certainly I would encourage it to be shared as soon as is possible.
Absolutely, I agree.
Anything else for the committee work programme? No. There is a notice I should have probably given earlier, which was a Reg 10 notice given to me in my capacity as Chair of Corporate Scrutiny Committee regarding the Parklands lease for the Alzheimer's Cafe. The lease was extended, and in my capacity as Chair of this committee, I was given notice of that. I circulated the email to members of the committee, but I'm obliged to report it in public. So as an extension of the lease for the Alzheimer's Cafe. Item 7, pre-decision scrutiny on children's services future arrangements, page 31 to 32, and page 11 of the Cabinet papers, which is where the report is. There are 3 options presented in it, and there is a recommendation that to Cabinet that option 2 be selected. I'm going to invite the Cabinet member, also the leader, if she'd like to introduce this item.
As you say, the paper is there in the Cabinet papers, the full paper. Apologies that it wasn't ready for you to see it in enough time. There was a number of things that needed some small tweaks. As you can see, we've acted very promptly on this and got the ball into motion very quickly. It was something we couldn't really hang around on. By law, we have to have a Director of Children's Social Care. We had to have that person in place, that director. So we've moved very quickly. What I am pleased to say is that through the cross-party working group, which is all members of this chamber, we were able to move forward with that recommendation that you've got there. I don't think there's anything more to sort of say than that is the recommendation of that committee, which is the cross-party for us all.
Thank you. I don't know whether I said there are 3 options. There are 5 options in that report with a recommendation of option 2. Open to the committee. Councillor Love.
Yeah, so it says here, does the committee support the proposed recommendations or wish to report any comments? Well, as we haven't read it because it wasn't there, you know, a bit bemused when I just had 1 page, and then we've got a word like this to read. I don't see how I can possibly make any recommendation when I haven't seen it. It's not in the paper.
Yeah, Councillor Love. So it didn't come with our corporate scrutiny papers, but it has come since then as part of the Cabinet papers. The report itself is only well, pages 11 to 27. So it's some 16 pages long. It's not with an appendix. It's not.
I think the point I'm making is that you're asking me to make a recommendation or support a recommendation when it wasn't here on time for us to be able to read it, or all of us to be able to read it in a timely way. That's the point I'm making.
Yeah. Anyone got any comments on the content of the reports? No. Yes.
I would just like to point out that as soon as the Cabinet papers were published, I did email out to the committee the paper for them to read.
I mean, I've certainly had no problem with reading it in the time frame. Well, I'm happy to give comment on it. I think option 2 seems the most pragmatic option, and I'll just why not? I'll read it out. To agree to the termination of the current partnership agreement with effect from 31st of January 2024, returning the overall leadership and management of all children's services functions, including in education, in-house, with arrangements for buyback of specialist service support provision where there's a cost benefit for a minimum period of 12 months. I mean, that seems the most seamless option, the most flexible option. Some of the other options seem to be highly unrealistic that they could be delivered between now and January, including setting up an entire sort of in-house service effectively from scratch. I'm happy for this committee to so Councillor Peter.
Sorry, it was remiss of me. Can I please thank the council staff that worked so quickly and efficiently on this one with everybody else. They've been absolutely exceptional at not letting any grass grow under their feet and trying to get this resolved as smoothly and seamlessly. And thank you for reading the document.
Yeah, so I'm happy for the this committee to endorse option 2, if that's what how the committee feels. All those in favour? All those against? So all in favour, except Councillor Love, who's against. Thank you.
Can I just make the point again? There was a constitution about papers being received at a particular point in time. It wasn't in the pack, and therefore it shouldn't have even been discussed, really.
Yeah, understood. Thank you. Yeah, Councillor. Sorry, Wendy Pereira.
Thank you, Chair. I think it is normal practice for us to try and get papers released earlier, and I think this is a conversation that I've also had with yourself and the Vice Chairman in terms of the forward plan and looking at the forward plan and being able to pre-scrutinise decisions before they become formal cabinet papers. The difficulty with this one was that it was a late decision into the forward plan because we were notified late in the day and have had to respond very quickly. So unfortunately, in these circumstances, the paper itself wasn't completed, ready to publish for your timescale for corporate scrutiny. But we were aiming for the cabinet timescale, and that's why it was slightly late.
Chair, can I just, I accept
Go
what,
on, councillor. Last one.
yeah, I accept what you're saying, but some of us are dyslexic and there's equality and inclusion here. That's the point that I'm making, so that people can review papers in a timely way according to what is a legal right of mine, my disability.
Councillor Love, I'm not disagreeing with you. I don't think anyone is. I think in this case, there was a particular urgency to it, but that I completely take your point. Papers should be on time wherever possible. Thank you. Item 8, pre-decision scrutiny on housing affordability supplementary planning document, pages 33 to 94. Is the relevant cabinet member here to introduce it? Yes, he is. Councillor Fuller.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Members will see the cabinet report for the affordable housing SPD that has been worked on. Members will be aware that it went out to consultation during the summer. We had good feedback from local residents, from town and parish councils, and from stakeholders. And the feedback that we've received is within the report. I think one of the things that we all recognise, and certainly members that are members of the planning committee, and those of us who view the planning committee, will see that perhaps we haven't got enough teeth in our toolbox to be able to create the affordable housing that is top of, I think, most members' agenda with respect to the Isle of Wight Council. What we've tried to do is we've tried to sharpen those tools that we've got prior to the adoption, or maybe not, of the IPS. This is basically a stepping stone to get us to allow the planning committee perhaps more teeth to be able to make sure that we get the right type of housing and affordable housing for our local residents on the island. Any questions I'm quite happy to take. Thank you.
Councillor Quigley.
Yeah, Councillor, just what are those teeth? Because this is a question that goes round and round and round and round. You know, we're building the wrong houses. Why are we building the wrong houses? Because that's what developers want to build. So what teeth does it give the council?
I think, you know, one of the things that members of the planning committee will recognise is that we've wanted to ensure that affordable housing is accessible to more local people. We talk about affordable housing quite a lot, but you know, it's laid out also in the report that affordable housing on the island is not affordable for most island residents. And there is the stats within the report that highlights that. What we're trying to do is by issuing things like the local connection criteria and the deeper discounts on affordable housing for residents is a step in the right direction, which has been missed. You know, a lot of people are still living at homes with mum and dad. Sometimes in their 20s, sometimes in their 30s, sometimes in their 40s. We've all had residents that have come to us concerned about these things. And what I've been trying to do with the fantastic team of officers that I've got is to make sure that this policy is much more fit for purpose for 2023 than it was with the Island Core strategy that the planning committee are working to with decisions that they're making. So again, it's updating planning policy as it should be. So it is a step in the right direction. Until we get a new island plan, it gets us, you know, gets housing for the right people. Unfortunately, Councillor Stevens isn't here. I was hoping Councillor Stevens might want to add his bit on affordable housing and the importance of affordable housing. And while I'm talking, not wanting to sound like Councillor Stevens, there are also mentions about some of the dialogue that this council's been having with people like Rent Plus. and we want Rent Plus to be part of the mix in affordable housing that is available for local people.
Thank you. I guess the question I'm asking is, pretend I'm a developer. I'm going to build 120 houses. How do you make sure I do enough one bedroom at 70% of market rent or price, 70% of two bedrooms, 65% for three bed? What's going to make me adhere to that?
Again, what you would find with developers that would be coming to the council for more 1 and 2 bedrooms homes, and that is what we need, is that this would help to spark that negotiation with the planners. We cannot force developers to build 1 and 2 bedroom homes, but we can set a policy in place saying, well, this is where the need is, this is where the demand is, and this is all part of the SBD that we've got, that there is a need and a demand for 1 and 2 bedroom homes. Can you work with us with the plans that we have in place? Whereas otherwise, if we're working on outdated data, then it makes it more difficult for officers to be able to defend their position. So that will allow us to do that. And I think a lot of the information that I'm sure I saw a table somewhere within the report, the need for 1 and 2 bedroom houses on the island is quite significant.
Yeah, and so it would be superseded by the island plan, though. Is that what you're saying as well?
We would want the island plan to reflect what is in this SPD, but whilst we have no island plan, and it could be 2 or 3 years before we have an island plan, this is actually policy that will enable our planning officers and our planning committee to go the right way, or the way that certainly a lot of members have asked me to pursue.
Yeah, Simon Cook first.
Thank you. Firstly, I appreciate the consultation done with local councils, and note that some of the comments have been taken on board, so thanks for that. On specifics, the document rather states that the importance of local housing needs surveys, which seems to be quite a key component of the data required. I'm specifically looking at paragraph 4.6, where it states that local housing needs surveys could be funded by developers. Could you expand on that? How might that work? And also, it seems to be clear that there's no financial support by the council for these surveys, but is there any other sort of support, templates, guidance, things like that? Thank you.
It's funny you asked that question, Councillor Cook. I'm having a discussion with Newport and Carisbrooke Community Council in a few weeks' time, precisely on that issue. I think they want to get a housing needs survey done in Newport, and again, these are things that we are talking to town and parish councils with. The door is always open. I think one of the, you mentioned also within the policy about developers may want to put in their own housing needs survey. Now, I know that there will be some concern regarding that, but it is something that developers have suggested that they might be willing to contribute towards. How impartial that might be is something that, again, we need to negotiate, and to make sure that we get the right information from the right people for the right people living in the right places. So again, it is all under negotiation, and I would hope that this SBD helps us to assist there.
Councillor Spink.
Thank you. Councillor Fuller, if I've heard you correctly, you say that the SPD allows deeper discounts to be given. That is deeper than the 20% discount. Is that what you're saying?
That is what our intention is. It says within the report, and I'm sure that you've read the report, that again, a lot of the deeper discounts that we're asking for is something that is open to negotiation with developers. If we don't mention about deeper discounts, then a developer will turn around and potentially say, well, you know, where is your policy for deeper discounts? You know, there is no policy to substantiate that. What we're doing by inserting that within the SPD is it actually says, well, within the SPD, this is something that we will be trying to pursue. And I think this is the methodology behind what we are trying to pursue.
I'm sorry, but if you look at paragraph 4 of the Cabinet report, it says that deeper discounts from market value cannot be changed as a matter of law.
No.
So how is this SPD changing that? You say it is, but it's not.
As you'll be aware, that the island plan itself does mention about deeper discounts for local residents to enable them on the island to get their foot up onto the housing ladder. And I think that is quite an important aspect of the island planning strategy to ensure that we support our local residents. The statistics speak for themselves, how the island compares to other parts of the country and how difficult it is for island residents to get onto that housing ladder. What we're trying to do is we're trying to enable policy-wise these negotiations to take place with developers.
Well, I'm sorry, Councillor Fuller, but it is important that we are clear. You've presented this on the basis that the SPD allows deeper discounts, and the purpose of that is obviously to make affordable housing affordable. Because the paper clearly shows that the 20% discount from market value for both purchasing houses and renting them is not helping islanders. Now, you say this SPD does help islanders in that regard. Paragraph 4 says this. It cannot alter the percent of affordable housing required. Change the policy thresholds for when it is required or require deeper discounts from market value. That's what the Cabinet document signs. That's the document that says, that's the document that you've signed. That's directly contradictory to what you're saying. And I'm getting very tired of people claiming that they're sorting things out when they're not. You are not changing the discount by this SPD, are you?
I would disagree with you, Councillor Spink. I think the national policy stipulates that our discount for affordable housing should be 20% market value. We have looked at our unique circumstances that we have on the island, and we think that we have an argument to make to government to extend that deeper discount for our local residents. So we are doing what we are being asked to by members and ensuring that there is.
Where does it say that in these papers that we're going to use unique circumstances to claim the increased discount? Where does it say that?
May I come in? I mean, I think Councillor Spink's criticisms are well articulated. I mean, my reading of paragraph 4 of page 35 of the Cabinet report does seem to make it quite clear that deeper discounts cannot be adopted by the council, but the words speak for themselves.
You see, if I may, I'm sorry if I'm hogging the limelight here, but it's important. We tend, in my opinion, to dance around these issues, and that's what you're doing now. I want to see deeper discounts, and I want to know how it's going to happen. It can't happen by this SPD. Now, I've been pushing for a long time because I don't see why it can't happen, but the SPD says it can't. Now, I don't see why it can't happen because the discount under the NPPF is a minimum. So if it's a minimum, I don't see why the discounts can't be introduced straight away. Now, you're telling me they are, but this paper is saying that they're not. And I'm getting fed up with great respect, Paul, to people like you who spin a yarn when the yarn isn't true. I want to solve the housing problem on the Isle of Wight, despite being called a NIMBY, which I'm most definitely not by certain people. I want to solve the problem. I don't want to make political platform statements from either the portfolio holder or other members of this committee. If you're saying deeper discounts are being given by this SPD, show me where.
because they're not.
I'm sorry, what the aspiration is to aim to get the deeper discounts. We cannot get the deeper discounts at the moment because legislation won't allow us. However, if we have an island plan in place, we can make a case to the government inspector that our circumstances are different on the
The
here.
only way, Paul, that you could do that is to claim exceptional circumstances. And you've made it, I think, pretty clear that we're not going to be doing that.
I haven't said, I'm sorry, councillor Spink, have you any evidence to suggest that?
I'm
Because
gonna-
I haven't actually made that statement. I think we need to look at exceptional circumstances. But in the meantime, we are looking at the unique circumstances that the island has. So we are, and I don't know why you're nodding your head, councillor.
I'm going to bring the meeting to order and ask Councillor Quigley to make a comment or ask a question.
I don't think anybody, and my feelings you're misunderstanding what this document does, Councillor Spink, because we can't legally do anything because we aren't building our own houses. You can't say to a developer, you're going to give 30% discount without sitting down and then saying, them coming up with a plan how they can do that. And I don't know if you're purposely misunderstanding or you're just genuinely misunderstanding. I can't work it out. So well, it would appear, and I'm not defending Councillor Fuller because that's his job, but nobody in this room sensibly thinks that we can come up with a document that is based on advice and aspiration that legally works outside of national legislation. No, he hasn't. No, that's what you've said. To be fair.
I mean, well, I think it sounded like Councillor Fuller maybe slightly overstated that the document could or might or possibly deliver it, but I think he's clarified it now to say it's an aspiration. So I take that clarification. I will come back to Councillor Spink, but I'm just going to go on to other councillors for the moment. Councillor Quirk.
I'd just like to investigate the local connection criteria in Appendix 1, page 66. It excludes people who are on seasonal employment. Now, majority of people who are employed in the Bay are on seasonal employment. Most of the hotels close for at least a month, sometimes two. But it's other major employers, UKSA, PGL, take the instructors on, and they don't actually have them for 12 months of the year. They take them on annual contracts for 9 or 10 months, and they're excluded. But they're actually here all the time. They're working for all of the time that they can, but they're excluded from being allowed to be on the local need. Why?
I think the reason that we had the 5 years was because there is a real desperation, and there was an issue that was raised with local people that had problems. But I actually take what Councillor Quirk says, because I think he makes a very good point. There are a lot of people that work here during the summer. They live here for a long time. If they have had that connection for 5 years, then that's great. But a lot of people that come to the island to work on the island don't have that connection. So I think Councillor Quirk makes a very good point.
There are lots of people who actually work year on year in some of these tourism establishments. But the tourism establishments don't stay open for 12 months of the year. And a lot of them actually don't give someone. When I had a hotel, I actually gave my people 12-month contracts, even if we closed for a month. They still had a 12-month contract. But a lot of these employers, they don't. They give them 9, 10, 11-month contracts, and then they give them a new contract for the new season. And this excludes those sorts of people. And they may have been on the island for 10 years, but you're still excluding them. Not the 5 years, it's the exclusion, because it's how you define seasonal employment. If you sort of define it as different employers every year, maybe there's some merit in it, but this is you've got islanders who are here all the time.
I totally agree with Councillor Quirk. I think that there are a lot of people that live and they sofa surf during the winter. Sometimes you have a lot of people that have been sofa surfing for years. They go back to work during the summer season, but they're still islanders. If they've been here for 5 years, then they would comply with, as I understand, I'm not an expert on it, but I would understand that they would comply with that local connection criteria. However, if you wish to make a recommendation to cabinet, I'm quite happy to accept that, because I think you make a very good point. I need to get clarity on those transient people that we have living particularly within our tourist areas, and I think you make a very good point. Thank you, Chris.
Councillor Quirk, do
Sorry.
you want this committee to make
I
a
would like
recommendation?
that to be clarified, because I think there are islanders who are long-term islanders, some of them, birth, who are in this situation, and they're being pushed aside because we're assuming that everyone who comes and works in a hotel is Spanish or Latvian, and they're not.
I'm just going to bring in Councillor Lever, because he looks like he's got something pretty relevant to say by his facial expression.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to double check. I would like clarification first before we make a recommendation, because I appreciate what Councillor Quirk is saying, but would those people not be covered by the other criteria here? Are we actually excluding any of those people specifically? Would that?
Put an extra couple of years on.
No, well, sorry, but
So Councillor Quigley.
sorry, but if you read it, it's saying if you come for seasonal employment and go, you're not eligible. But if you stay for seasonal employment and then you're not, you fall into one of the categories. You're still on the island. So it's only if you're not on the island you don't qualify. I mean, I appreciate clarification. I may have just completely made that up, but my reading of it is that you're not being penalised. You have a summer job and you stay here. It's if you come here specifically for 12 weeks, work, earn a load of money, go somewhere else, and then you're eligible to buy a house, which you're never going to occupy. I think that's why it's written that way.
Councillor Love.
Thank you. I'm just kind of taking a little bit of hope from this report, to be honest, because I'm looking at point 12. So we have actually increased the number of affordable houses that we are building, which is a step in the right direction, and hopefully that move will continue to go forward. But I think it's really important to just recognise the people here. 96% of households are unable to afford a median property price. So I think the point is that they're still outside the range of most of our residences housing, and what we need to do is make sure that all the strategies actually build on that. 114 houses of affordability completed in 21-22. We need to keep accelerating that, because it's still well short of the 372 houses which we actually need. And if you look at the total there, on that point, it's taken 7 years to actually reach 330 affordable houses, where actually we need to build 372 a year. So that's the figure, that's the focus of where we actually really need to be, in my opinion. So I think there is some hope that some of the work that has been going on by the council and others is actually now starting to see some movement. And there's not a lot that we can do about what the government has to say, other than keep moving forward and things.
Councillor Fuller.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Carl. I know one of the other things that we were hoping to see something from government on within their levelling up bill was about the local connection criteria and affordable housing. We are still awaiting that, but I think what we're trying to do is we're trying to move a step in the right direction. We're hearing what Michael Gove is saying, and we are trying to address some of the issues that we all are quite sensitive to. I think Councillor Spink and me are quite sensitive to trying to get the things addressed. We may have different ways of doing it, but I think we are all trying to aim for the right thing here. And I think this is a step in the right direction. We've all gone out to consultation, we've had feedback, and we are trying to work with our communities to try to get a roof over a lot of residents' head. And that's what we're all here about. Peter and I will disagree until the cows come out, but that's, I want it to achieve exactly the same. And this is a step in the right direction. Councillor Stevens as well, I'm sure, would be saying the same thing if he was here tonight.
Councillor Spink.
Just have 2 questions, please. If we've established, doesn't matter how many how many houses that we give the tag affordable to, they won't be affordable to islanders unless the discount is greater than 20%. So you can call them affordable houses and we can build 5 million of them, but it won't help. Now, if this SPD, which I think we're now agreed, does not and cannot lower the percentage, so it'll increase the percentage, so it's a greater discount, and you agree that now, what does this SPD in just a couple of sentences actually do? Because I've read it and I don't see that it does anything. It can't lower and doesn't lower the discount or raise the discount, whichever way you want to look at it, give a greater discount. And the only other thing it proposes, if you read it carefully, is changing the 70% split between rented and 30% other properties. So 70%, it goes up to 80% rented out of the 35% affordable housing. Well, that's already happening. Jeff Brodie is asking for that in just about every committee meeting, and jolly good. Now, so it purports to do two things: change that, which is already happening, and you say, I thought, that it gives a greater discount, but it doesn't give a greater discount. So what does it then achieve? In a couple of sentences, what does it give the Isle of Wight resident to make the housing more affordable? Because in my view, it gives rock all.
I suppose, and if I would paraphrase Councillor Spink, he's saying it's a bit lightweight.
Councillor Spink, I've heard you speak at several planning committee meetings, and you've mentioned about trying to do more, to create more affordable housing and having a policy to be able to do that. This isn't all singing, all dancing, but it is a step in the right direction. Rather than using a policy that we have from 2012, it does update things. It updates the evidence base that we've got should we go to appeal and we ask a developer to create more affordable housing. That is what we're tasked to do, and that is what councillors have been asking for. So it does put us in it does give us a step in the right direction. Like I say, and like the paper says, it is only a stepping stone until we can get the IPS.
I have one second question, and that is this: we're going to have to agree to disagree. I think this is a strategy upon a strategy that achieves nothing, but we'll have to agree to disagree with that. Page 66, the local connection criteria from H to O ought not to apply to housing in the wider rural area, because it would be contrary to the local need criteria. And the local need criteria, my insistence, was transferred from the current plan to the draft plan. Therefore, planning consent ought not to be granted unless, this is under the new plan, unless a local need can be established in the rural area. And local need does not mean, because it's defined in the draft plan, again at my request, does not mean the Isle of Wight need. So therefore H to O is irrelevant and ought not to, and it ought to be clarified that that does not apply to the wider rural area. And I'd ask the committee to recommend that, please.
I'll invite Councillor Fuller to respond first.
I know Councillor Spink has been in dialogue with officers because he has made the view about the rural housing need quite strongly to officers in consideration of that. You know, Councillor Spink has his own view. I have my view. This paper also stipulates that that we want to try to achieve as much as we can.
I'm going to come.
It's point. If I may just say, it's utterly pointless me asking you these questions because you simply don't answer them.
Councillor Quigley.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. A comment and then a question. The comment is based on what Councillor Spink has said, and he fully backing the need to build the right homes to the right people. The response is then to say don't build them in this area. But the question is what would be the advantages in not adopting this? what would be the advantage of turning it down? Would we be worse off if we adopted it?
I will ask you that if it's a question to me. That, all right. Oh, okay. We don't want to hear my.
But you didn't write the document, Councillor Speak. Councillor Fuller did.
Councillor Quigley, can you just reiterate that question to Councillor Fuller? He can answer it.
To Councillor Fuller, would we be worse off by adopting this document? As in, is there any point saying no, we don't support it?
Absolutely, we'd be worse off because we have no, the policy that we have for affordable housing is fairly loose. It's out of date. It needs to be updated. We're doing that. We've, you know, as a corporate responsibility of the administration to do that. I think even members of the opposition support that we get a decent policy for affordable housing. So we've listened to what people have said, and we're trying to make headway on it.
Fine, but I mean, my view on it, yeah, you know, it doesn't change the world, but I'm not sure this paper is capable of changing the world. It's better than nothing, but it's probably not much better than nothing. But it
fools the island public into thinking we're doing something when we're not, and that's deceitful, and I object to it.
I think the paper speaks for itself. I'm going to take some more comments. Councillor Quirk.
You moved on from me before I had the chance to actually say that, yes, I would like this to be looked at. I think we should put a suggestion to Cabinet that they look at the differentiation between transient workers and seasonal workers. There are people who are seasonal workers who work at the same place for years on end, but they are seasonal because they're shut for a month or two in the year, and they should not be penalised.
Well, I'm happy for the committee to recommend that the cabinet member and cabinet look at that and check that it's they're happy, it's clear. Is that the proposal, Councillor Quirk? Yeah. Do I see nods around the table? Are we happy to add that comment to our response? Formal vote. All those in favour? Yeah. Thank you.
This chair be minuted that I have made it very clear that I would like, and the it's been denied, as it were, which is perfectly acceptable, but I would have liked us to have recommended to Cabinet that this document does achieve nothing and is therefore irrelevant. And I'd like it on the record for the minutes that the portfolio holder for planning has been unable, in my opinion, to tell me what this achieves. And it achieves nothing, and it is hoodwinking the island public on a very serious issue. And I see Councillor Judy Jones-Evans shaking her head. Perhaps she'll tell me what it achieves then.
Councillor Quigley.
Could I therefore put on record that I couldn't disagree more with everything Councillor Spink just said?
Councillor Love, you had your hand up.
Just thinking that this is getting a bit silly now, to be
Yeah.
honest. I think you've made your comments, and they will have been captured somehow in the notes. I just think that we ought to move on to the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Love. I'm happy to move on. Item number 9, quarterly performance monitoring report, pages 95 to 176.
Sorry. Yeah, that's what I said. Move on to the recommendation.
Apologies. Yeah, I'm happy to recommend it subject to the comments that have been made. All those in favour? All those against? Majority, not unanimous. Yeah, thank you. Item 9, quarterly performance monitoring report, pages 95 to 176. As with recent custom, I don't propose to trawl through every page. It's been provided with the papers. We've all had the opportunity to look through it. I have 2 comments to make, but I'll invite anyone from the committee. Well, first I'll invite a cabinet member if they wish to add anything to what's already there. No, fine, thank you. Committee, Councillor Quirk.
over the last couple of weeks, there's been things in the media about whether the council's financially sound or not financially sound. We see in the figures for the forecast pressures that we've got nearly £4 million worth in adult social care and children's services. That's overspent. Now, that's okay because you've got reserves to cover it, but if you don't do something about it, you've got a structural deficit that's there forever. What's happening about it?
Councillor Bacon.
Well, I think I answered that earlier. The process of planning the budget is ongoing at the moment, and day-to-day management, prediction of pressures, seeing how pressures can be dealt with. It's the day-to-day work of the finance section. So it's what is happening every day.
Are we getting better? Is it coming back down? Or is the increase, the overspend ongoing? And is it going to be there as a long-term overspend? So there's a structural deficit.
I think that's probably a very technical question. I'd suggest you approach Chris Ward for an answer on that, because the pressures change each day. As the example is often given, if we have a serious care case that lands on the council's doorstep one morning, we suddenly get an additional pressure of 1 million at the drop of a hat. So, as I say, I don't think I can give an answer to say this will definitely be dealt with in will definitely be dealt with in this way. It is part of the daily ongoing management of the council and its finances. And I mean, if you look at the figures from last year on page 100, which I think is what Councillor Love was alluding to earlier, you will see occasionally you get a little bit of a bonus as well, and that changes the situation. We had, it's called an underspend. Essentially, it was a result of greater income being received from certain sources last year. And that obviously helped with last year's outturn, but there's also something that's enabled us to create greater resilience for this year. The main problem is, though, that this council has not been properly funded for many, many years, and it's a difficult job and a more difficult job week by week to manage the finances. But Mr. Ward does everything he can, the strategic direction the Cabinet gives him. And I'm waffling a little because it is something I can't give a precise answer to, because, as I say, it is the work each day. And the answer, if I gave you a very technical answer today, it might change completely tomorrow, because we might have new pressures arising. Some of those pressures that are taken into account of at the moment might just suddenly disappear.
I've got
managed properly is the main point.
I've got a question for you, Councillor Bacon, if I may. Page 158, it refers to the delay in the corporate plan refresh. Obviously, that's an important, corporate plan is an important document for the whole council, not least this committee. Do you have any timescales as to when the corporate plan refresh will take place? It refers to it later in the year. We're into September.
Yeah, I can't give you an update, and of course, I think we might want to wait and see what happens next week.
Thank you. Chief Executive.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, just to confirm, we all know that one of the early things that full council will be considering at their meeting next week is the election of a new leader. Once that new leader's announced their new cabinet, one of the early conversations I will be having with the cabinet will be the opportunity to refresh and bring forward a new corporate plan, a revised corporate plan for the remainder of the term of this sitting of the council.
Thank you. Councillor Drew.
Thank you, Chair. Just to note on page 100, I see there is a line, quite a substantial one, in terms of benefit overpayment recovery. I just wanted to seek some reassurance. That seems like quite a large figure, and I'm mindful of the fact that this may be not necessarily due to the fault of individuals claiming that payment. If they are making essentially a return to the council, what are the mechanisms to ensure, A, that doesn't happen in the first place, And if it does, how can we ensure that we take a sensitive approach potentially to people on the fringes of society? Thank you.
Well, I think that's very much an operational question. I'm going to hand over to Sharon Betts, who will be able to answer that much better than I can.
Housing benefit overpayments occur when people have changes of circumstance, and sometimes those notifications come late to us. So that creates an overpayment. What we do, we can recover those monies from ongoing benefit if that person continues to have entitlement, or we would invoice that and then agree a payment arrangement with that person that suits their financial needs. So very much taking a supportive approach to debt collection to ensure that actually those people do pay their monies that are due to the council. However, if there's no contact, we will enforce against the individual to collect those monies. But effectively, we do everything in our power to make sure that we advise our benefit claimants to tell us ASAP when they have a change in circumstance. That could be that they change work, they have different income that comes in. It could be that the composition of the family changes. There may be a new baby, or there may be a teenager that leaves to go to uni. All those are really, really important things to tell us because it will change the entitlement that we're paying. But I must say that people on the Isle of Wight are really good about doing that. So they try very hard because it's in their interest to make sure that they maximise the benefit that they're entitled to. So hopefully that will address your question.
Thank you. If I may have a very quick supplementary, which was how do we compare, if it's possible to compare to other local authorities? Are we essentially in a difficult position because we are not notifying quick enough, or are we fairly standard par?
I would say that we're in the upper quartile of performance in relation to that. We spend a lot of time encouraging people to tell us ASAP. That's why we've got the benefits portal, so people can actually go in as soon as they have their change of entitlement and actually put that information into their benefit claim themselves. Obviously, that's verified in the back office, but actually that gets through the notifications as soon as possible. We do receive a lot of information from the DWP around tax credits of those people who are on tax credits. A lot of those are automated amendments, so they will go through the system on an automated basis, but will be verified by some of the back office.
So one very final question. In terms of that notification, does it have to be done on the website, or can that be presumably can be done over the phone or via post?
Yeah, we will take that information as it comes, whether that's in writing, over the phone, or through the website.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Spink.
I may, rather than a question. On the banding for the housing register from page 112 onwards, I find these bands quite difficult from these papers to understand. And for example, band 1, page 112, is said to be, as if I understand it correctly, the most urgent and pressing of all the needs on the housing register. I think that's right. Now, if that's the case, I can't see anywhere in band 1 that tells me how many of those people are homeless or how many of those people are in temporary accommodation. And I think we would be helped to know that. Similarly, I can't find anything with that information on band 2, or for that matter, band 3. The only one that has homeless applicants on it is band 4. And I don't think that band 4 is the only band that deals with homeless people. So could we have clarity on that? Would corporate scrutiny recommend, please, that in each band, the number of homeless and the number in temporary accommodation is specified? And also, could we have, please, a definition of homeless and temporary accommodation as applied by the Isle of Wight Council to those bandings? I would ask corporate scrutiny, please, to ask Cabinet to provide that.
I agree some of the band descriptions do seem slightly odd, that homeless applicants are band 4 as opposed to a lower band, i.e. a more pressing needs band. That does seem slightly strange. But I suppose what Councillor Spink is asking is for more detail. Is that something that's doable? Whether it's desirable or not is another matter. Is it something that's doable?
Chairman, if I may, it's certainly doable. We can provide that more detail, but I wonder whether Laura Godian, as DAS and Director responsible for housing and housing needs, would give you some further information here this evening, and we can supplement it in writing afterwards as well.
Thank you. Please.
Of course, Chairman. So in essence, the housing banding is based on an equal need when everyone enters it. And the descriptors in relation to need relating to homelessness apply at the point of entry. That's band 4 for everyone. Circumstances which exceed that, urgent medical or welfare needs or overcrowding, then enhance the person's banding throughout that process. So the people within band 1 will be people who have the most pressing and urgent need as defined by the policy, which aligns to the national framework. People who have no housing solution at this moment in time would ordinarily fall within band 4, save for having any additional or pressing urgent need that would result in a higher banding being allocated. In terms of temporary and emergency accommodation, and there are 2 different criteria, temporary accommodation being available and emergency accommodation being available to support people who are homeless, there will be people within each of the bands who are in temporary accommodation or in emergency accommodation. And that is information that we should be able to provide moving forward as part of this reporting. I'll be happy to take that forward as a request of the team.
Thank you very much. I have a further comment or query. It was probably appropriate to direct it to the Cabinet Member for Transport. I think he's no longer here. It was page 125 refers to the council commissioning locally based consultants to review the 2 remaining issues which impact the efficiency and operation of Floating Bridge 6. It says the work is expected to take 6 months and should be concluded in December 2023. At this point, they'll provide a comprehensive paper setting out the above findings and recommendations for the council's consideration and approval. It would seem appropriate and a good idea for that paper and report to come before this committee. In the absence of a cabinet member, I wonder whether this committee is prepared to make that request. Report comes before us when it's ready. Seems to be some general nods. Can I take that? Can I take a vote on that we make a formal request? That seems to be unanimous. Thank you. Anything else? No, fine. Okay. Item 10, Corporate Complaints Annual Report, pages 177 to 188. Does anyone have any comments or question in relation to that report? Does the cabinet member wish to fill the silence?
Well, I think all I would do, Chair, is to point to paragraph 40, the concluding paragraph of the report. Overall, we've maintained an improved performance in respect of complaints received and those referred for investigation. However, we should aim to continue to improve the recording quality of learning outcomes and the use of complaints data to drive a culture of learning and reflection. We must also continue to promote an enabling role in the settlement of complaints and the early offer of remedies. That's the summary of the report, and I think it is a good summary.
Thank you. Councillor Cook.
Thank you. Comment really. Something that jumps out at me here is the extraordinarily high number of complaints made against Island roads. And the fact that there appears to be no detail whatsoever, although I do know that there's been agreement from August that they will review all complaints jointly with Ringway Island Roads and identify learning outcomes. I appreciate the cabinet member's not here now, but is there another cabinet member that knows anything about this and what steps to be taken to get some meaningful data from this? Because it clearly a high number of complaints with no other data is not very helpful.
Yeah, I think I'm reading the same box as you, Councillor Cook.
Yeah, sorry, that's
410
Yeah,
complaints against Island Roads and no learning outcomes.
yeah, sorry, that's page 181.
Does Councillor Bacon feel he's in a position to comment on that?
I'm afraid I think that's probably a matter for Councillor Jordan to address. He did whisper in my ear, apologies, he had to leave a little earlier than expected. I'm sure a written inquiry to him will yield a response, but I do not think I could give anything of value. Comments I might make today.
Councillor Cook, are you happy to ask that of him and share it with the committee?
Absolutely, yeah. I would,
Thank
yeah.
you. Councillor Love.
Yeah, I think that's a good recommendation that we do because, you know, you often read about Fix My Street. What would be really helpful to councillors is to know how many streets were fixed in their area for what kind of issue, well, not necessarily what was fixed, but how many complaints were made in that area so that we can then assess individually as councillors right across the island how those are being addressed and what needs to change in order to progress it. If we haven't got that data, we can't do that. And it's funny, I actually wrote that in my newsletter this month about actually, if we had that data, then we could support Island Roads in helping to have those things addressed. Because there are clearly going to be, well, there are clearly reductions in the amount of highways maintenance work that is being carried on, particularly in hedge cutting, weeding and all of those things. So if that data is included in there, we as councillors can then easily pull that out and say, and we'd like this to be addressed because it's an ongoing issue. If we don't know that, then we can't respond to support our residents.
Yeah, that's, I agree. That's a slightly different point, isn't it? About more detail in that reporting from Island Roads. I agree with you. I'd like to see a little more detail in the reporting of complaints from Island Roads. Or I might put that as a recommendation. I now have 3 councillors with their hands up. Councillor Downer.
I'd just like to say, Chairman, thank you. It wouldn't be only Fix My Street, it would be also things that went into the hub through info@islandroads.com or telephone calls. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Quigley.
Slightly different point in the report, but Children's Services came to us at Children's Service Scrutiny last week, and they have fully implemented their plan of dealing with complaints, which now involves face-to-face discussions with complainants, which actually yielded very, very good results. So that would be something I'd want to encourage we continue and perhaps adopt elsewhere.
Councillor Lever.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And just to follow on from Councillor Love's point, I think there's 2 separate things there, because I don't think Fix My Street counts as complaints. That's a separate thing, right? So no, yeah, I appreciate that. So I agree with Councillor Cook's initial point that learning outcomes 0 with 410 complaints is not great. So yeah, it'd be good to get that. As an aside from that, it's probably something I can speak to the chair of Neighbourhoods and Regen about. Councillor Love's request that we look into a bit more data coming back from Island Roads about Fix My Street, because that sounds pretty interesting.
Thank you. Councillor Cook, I think your question is about providing more explanation to what we've got in front of us. Are you happy to also ask for more clarity in their ongoing reporting? Although I think that should probably come from this committee, actually, if that aspect of it, that we would like to see more detail in the complaints. You know, if there are 410 complaints, I feel that could be broken down into categories. It's a sufficient number that could be subcategorized. Quickly come to Councillor Bacon.
I'm sure that can be done, Chair. I just was going to pick up on the point that I think Councillor Lever's now made, that we do seem to be conflating what may just be simple requests that may be dealt with perfectly satisfactory through info at Island Roads and Fix My Street, and complaints, which at the other end of the process perhaps, and as I say, I don't think one should conflate the two. I also wonder if maybe that deep dive for information on those two separate things might be more appropriate for the Neighbourhoods Committee, but it's a matter for you. But I just don't want to see the two things, just the assumption that someone writes to Info Island Roads, it's a complaint. It's not, and sometimes they're actually dealt with and dealt with very well.
I think there now might be three things. Councillor Cook's written question effectively to Island Roads, which is for him, and if you can share it with this committee, thank you. I think the deep dive into Fix My Street would be for Neighbourhoods and Regen as a committee. I think in terms of the complaint data, which is sent to this committee as a report every so often, every quarter, annually, I think this committee, if it's happy to do so, will request that Island Roads provides a little more breakdown in its complaints data. The number of complaints, 410. I think we'd like to see some subcategories of the types of complaints that are in those, as well as the learning outcomes issue. And it may be just some doubling up in a formal request from this committee in Councillor Cook's question, but I don't think that's a problem. Is the committee happy that that is a request from us to Island Roads? Yeah, fine, thank you. All those in favour? Yeah, good. Yeah, just picking up to Councillor Quigley on the face-to-face complaints being leading often to better outcomes. Maybe this committee could make that as a recommendation to the council generally where possible. Yeah, fine, nods all round. Thank you. There is nothing, there is something else. Councillor Churchman.
Yes, recently at Audit Committee, we talked about the cost of sending children off island for care. I think we have 1 or 2 children costing us in the region of £1 million. I put forward a suggestion, which I hope will come before scrutiny to refer to Cabinet, that the island seriously look at providing accommodation for these very, very sick and ill children. Councillor Jarman identified a site to me at the end of Dodnell, which apparently is in quite good condition, has suitable safety around it, etc. But the whole point of my putting forward this is strategic, because if it takes us 5, 6, 7, 8 years to provide this facility, it will cut our enormous childcare costs. And secondly, we could attract business from across the water. I don't know how many of you are aware of, there is a company on the island who built a brain care unit. They saw an opening and provided this facility at Northwood House, and they actually attract, when I say business, for want of a better word, from across the water to this facility. Now, surely if we provided really good residential care, we would cut our own costs and also provide a facility which would attract people from across the water. So I don't know whether it comes to scrutiny and then is referred to Cabinet, or which way round it goes.
That feels like a member's question, perfectly valid one. Looks like the chair of Children's Scrutiny might be like to
Yeah,
answer.
it'd probably be best to come to Children's Scrutiny first, because we can actually probably give it more time, and actually, because I totally share what you're saying, Vanessa. I think the reason Bewley House has gone out and offered a place to a child from across the water is because there is, and it's an awful way to put it, but an opportunity, and we do need to look seriously at how we care for children that have a desperate need, and I know Laura's very keen to find a solution too.
Councillor Bacon's got his hand up, and then Councillor Jones Evans.
Sorry, you possibly weren't expecting me to comment. I think if Richard's committee is going to look at that, it might be worth delving back into recent history, because a plan was worked up in 2016 for 2 6-bed units, which did not get anywhere, and it was found not to be viable at the end of the day. I'm not, because the plan was under when I was Children's Services Cabinet member, but then the outcome happened once I'd ceased to be a councillor in 2017. I don't know what happened, but just to avoid reinventing the wheel and doing work that may have already been done, it would be worth digging out, I think, that proposal and finding out what happened to it.
Yeah, I appreciate you letting me speak, Chair. Yeah, almost like a reference to that work that was done. I was going to speak about, 2016, I think it was. We had a cross-party working group where we looked at exactly this, our biggest expenditure items, which adult social care and children's services, and how we could use up the ASDA receipt to alleviate that, to invest in a long-term plan. However, so that got to that point where we had the plans were done, as Councillor Bacon was saying, was correct in what he said, but that all seemed to wither on the vine from 2017 onwards. I'm not sure what happened to the ASDA receipt, but that was the intention. So it was a big cross-party working group that I was part of at the time. So yeah, you're completely right, Councillor Churchman, is exactly what you should be doing, but I don't know whether we've missed the opportunity for that, but maybe there may be an investor save option, but obviously borrowing is not quite so cheap as it was even 8 months ago. So yeah, we have to look at everything.
Thank you. Well, I'll leave it in the hands of Children's Scrutiny and/or Cabinet. Yeah, thank you. I mean, we're still on corporate complaints annual report, but we sort of morphed into members' questions. Is there anything else on the annual report? In which case, are there any other members' questions? Councillor Spink.
Risk of everyone groaning, I have a question, and that it relates to the point that I've raised. And I've made it clear I don't think I've had an answer. So I'd like a written answer, please, to the following question. Please identify, with reference to the papers produced, what the SPD does to make affordable housing affordable by residents on or below the average island wage. Now, I would ask, please, if I could have the answer before Cabinet on Thursday, given that it's a fairly simple question of a paper that's put before this committee. I'd like to know, and if possible, the references in the documentation to what it does.
Councillor Fuller.
I will, I'll contact officers and ask that a response is given in writing. I think that is the appropriate way forward. Thank you.
Point out to me where it
is. Any other questions? No, in which case I'll bring the meeting to a close. Thank you.